Good morning, Bitcoin. My name is Thomas Hunt, and this is Proof of Work. Proof of Work is a show about the people behind Bitcoin and how they got here. We're joined today by Florian Mayer. How's it going, Florian?
Hey, good morning. I'm pretty good. Just arrived yesterday afternoon in Manchester, enjoying the event,
Nice.
talking to a lot of people.
Did you travel far to get here?
No, I'm based in Munich, Bavaria, so it's
That's
a
pretty
short
far.
trip.
That's
Yeah.
not, that's outside of England. I mean, come on, man. Oh, it's just Munich. It's right next door to Manchester. I know more geography than that. Come on.
Yeah, that's good. Actually, I expected the trip to be longer.
Yeah,
I mean Brexit. But surprisingly, it was a smoothless experience. I spent more time at Munich Airport than at Manchester Airport.
There you
so
go. Hey,
it
it
was a
worked
good
out.
experience. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, we're going to get started with everyone's favorite and most familiar question. What was your first computer?
My first computer, the actual model must have been like some PC XC or 82, 86, so
Nice.
a very early one I got from my godfather back then. I was roughly 5 years old, so I was very lucky because he was working as an engineer at Infineon
Oh, wow.
Siemens. So I'm working and developing microcontrollers for airbags and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And he basically built computers himself. And I was really lucky because he was living like 2 doors away from our house. And yeah, I basically spent all my childhood in his basement, getting the new computers. As soon as there was a new double-speed CD-ROM or quad-speed CD-ROM, I got
Sure.
it.
Yeah.
So that was my first computer was basically a moving target.
I remember those days with the towers and the PCs. You
Yes.
take this part out and that part out. And yeah, I remember the 2X CD, the 4X, the 8X, the 32X.
Yeah.
They didn't even work very well. But yeah, you could rip the CDs faster that
Yes.
way. It meant a lot in that time. You were trying to get that data off there. So that's a really interesting way to get started. And you had that great tech support. He's like right next door. You always get it fixed, always get some more information. So what did you do with the computer when you started?
Yeah, basically the first thing I did was obviously playing games. Back then, everyone ripped games. We shared it. We weren't even able to buy them because
Sure.
it was so early. I actually made use of that offer by some programmers. I think it was on the Humble Bundle where you could buy an extra because you pirated the games when you were young. So I did that and I was happy to do that. So my first games were probably text-based games
Sure.
that I programmed myself in BASIC.
Yeah.
There was some games like the Asteroids were
Yeah.
a classic. Like
Sure.
my first monitor was black and green, so monochrome. Then we went to Tandy color, and then I played like Space Quest, King's Quest.
Oh, I love that.
I
Roger
learned,
Wilco. Yeah,
no
yeah,
kidding.
yeah.
I think I learned more English playing those games because there was no mouse pointer where you could click and things. So were actually
Yeah, you
required to type in the text zone. I was mindlessly typing in TechSuit, for example, to go out to the space for
Sure.
Space Quest.
Yeah.
And I had to look every word up. So I learned a lot, and some people say it might be the reasons that my English not that bad. So, but I really
Well, there we
enjoyed
go.
these
Shout
days.
out to
Yeah.
Sierra there. making
Yes,
the early games.
absolutely.
It's interesting you mentioned ripping games. At the time, we were so nervous about it. We were so afraid of like the copy, the floppy, and the piracy. But now everyone I talk to is like, yeah, I borrowed games. Yeah, I made copies of the cassette tapes. Nobody had anything. We were all kids. And one of the big stories that I always remember is that I got my first copy of like Photoshop, and I got it from someone else. And this allowed me as a kid to learn Photoshop, and then I could use it for jobs, and then the jobs would buy it for me, and then they sold more copies. And the same with Microsoft Office and a lot of other software that I borrowed and learned how to use. And it's such a common thing. It's surprisingly common. It's like,
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I learned a lot of different. Also, as you said, like software components, I wouldn't have been able to try because they had such a high price tag.
Sure.
So I started using it, and some of those I still use. I happily pay for them if they're good.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good point, and I always we all had these like Serials 2000, like with the collections of Serials, trying those out. I mean that's how it was.
It was so funny. A friend of mine taught me to search on Alta Vista before Google, and it was like you search for the name of the game plus crack. And it would come up,
Yeah.
and you're like, this magic word plus crack or plus cereals, these kind of things.
Yeah.
This search modifiers would let you get what you needed.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember that, and if you were lucky, you had like this key generator with that like fantastic chip tunes, and you were like, well,
Always
installing,
playing
look it
music.
up.
Yeah.
And I really love to think about these days.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. So starting out in basic programming, where did you go from there? Did you stick with computers the whole time, or did you kind of drift away?
Yeah, basically, I kind of stick to it. I spent a lot of time researching. For example, when like the SUSE Linux line came out, I
Sure.
basically locked myself into our basement for 6 months trying it out.
Yeah.
Main reason for this was actually not because I was very curious about SUSE Linux, but back then I was completely broke, and I was obviously at the same time also curious about how this new operating system that seems to become a new thing
Sure.
actually works. My NT4 back then, I think it was broke. I was playing Diablo on it, networked. I think it was
Yeah.
on loopback or something like that with the son of my godfather. So I wanted to try something new. I was completely broke, so I spent like my last funds for I think it was an 8 CD collection for the installation.
Sure.
As it was kind of the Amiga experience. That's what my friends told me because I never had an Amiga, but. And I
Yeah.
installed it, and to be honest, I really kind of fell in love with the open source movement back then, where you had this huge collection of software where basically you had so many choices. You could compile it yourself.
Sure.
You had like 3 variants of the same program. Obviously, some were shit, but still, you had a lot of choices.
Yeah.
And since software licenses became pretty common, and we actually, you become bigger and you start thinking about, okay, do I want to support a software company? Maybe I don't want to pirate it. So for me, it was the natural choice. If I have the choice to go open source, I will do that. So trying
So
that.
SUSE Linux was one of the first big desktop Linuxes. So did you stick with it? Did you keep Linux on the desktop, or using many systems?
I'm actually I used it for a while, and like with many things, I tend to dig deep very fast,
Yeah.
and at some point, SUSE just felt like the newbie distribution, if you want so, and so I almost immediately went to Debian, like for as an example.
Sure.
Maintained my own packages, compiled software, tried
Yeah.
Slackware for a while.
Hey, Slackware.
Yeah, it's old school, so still around obviously, but Arch Linux, it's one of my recent
Yeah.
favorites. But basically, it's not so much about the distribution, but about open source. Like also
Sure.
for routers, like the OpenVRT stuff. I really like how much you can accomplish with an open source desktop. Personally, for my day job, I use OS X because for my daily tasks that are completely boring, like mail and browsing, I don't want to tinker. I did that in the
See?
past, built my desktop from scratch, but I tend to keep myself busy with stuff I don't have to do actually. So, like recompile the version from OpenOffice or something like that. I don't have to have time for that nowadays.
Yeah, I have the
unfortunately,
same feeling where I've pretty much given up Windows. I used to be great at reinstalling it, and I could break it, and I could reinstall it, and I
Yes.
could break it again, and I'd never do any work. I mean, my work was breaking Windows. And then I got a Mac, and I was like, oh, great, I'm going to edit video. And I actually edited video. And that was it.
Yeah,
That was the whole process. And it
yeah.
wasn't like, I tried desktop Linux for a while too, and it was fun. But every couple of weeks, it would drop your video driver. And then you're spending days, how do I fix the video driver? Or my sound would go out. How do I fix the sound? On the Mac, it's just like, I'm editing video, and that's it. And it's great for just doing tasks like that. But I agree with you. When you're a kid, you're psyched to break everything. You're psyched to try everything. And then now I'm getting ragged on a little because I'm not too into Lightning or whatever. I'm like, wait till it's out of beta. Wait till the software is ironed out. I mean, you guys can try it. I'm not stopping anyone from trying, saying you shouldn't try it. But like for me, it's like when it's done and it's polished and ready, I'll be there. But until then, I'm going to be working on my own projects and not necessarily recompiling and all these things like you're saying. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely feel that.
Good way to look at it. I mean, to be honest, even a Mac is unusable for me without Homebrew, but I need that addition. But still, the point is true.
Yeah, it's great to be out of Windows. There was like 20 different things I had to do before I could use the environment. Like it was called something like True Type fonts had to be on, has the right little shadow to it. I have to move the start bar up to the top. I have to remove a bunch of icons. There's all these programs running in the background that I have to stop, and then the spyware and the viruses and all this. And now I have a nice environment that I can use. Whereas a Mac, you just turn on, open it up, and it's ready to go.
Yeah, that's true.
It does really change things. So after you got Mac and desktop and Linux, where did you go? Did you become a computer programmer, or what kind of things did you get
Yes,
into?
actually, I did what I wasn't aware of what I wanted to do. I kind of, at first I thought I don't want to do this for work because it would ruin my main hobby. So I always thought like, okay, I love computers, I love hacking. Also came into security a little bit when I worked with computers. After I was infected with some weird shit on a website, so I was looking in what happened, how did it happen, so kind of attracted me. But at some point, I wasn't sure if I want to do this for work because it also kind of sucked me into like days and nights of where I completely forgot about myself.
Yeah.
There were days where I barely ate something or slept because I was like so deep and focused on learning this stuff that at some point, when it was due to actually find a job, I decided to go for the military first. Like in Germany, you had this like mandatory back then. I have two brothers, so as the oldest one, I thought, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be a little bit independent from everyone else. Was still living until 18 with my parents, and then I left. It was a good experience, and after that, I still wasn't sure what to do, so I did like what my dad back then told me, get a solid education. I basically learned bookkeeping or something like that, if you want so. But I learned it at a software company, and the fun story is I tried really hard to avoid software company and computing, but after like 6 months, I was hanging out with the administration team. I was consulting with the programming team. And I spent a couple of hours, maybe 2 or 3, with the actual job I had to do, I was hired for. And after 1.5 years, they said, okay, you're good. I finished the basic education, and then they hired me as programmer and consultant. So it's
a good thing you had all that bookkeeping training. Yeah, that really worked out. It came in handy.
I mean, it's good knowledge to have, so certainly no time wasted, but ultimately kind of I think about it as it's simple, like it seems to be my destiny to work in IT stuff and with computers. Nowadays I prefer more to actually work with people instead of like only sitting as a programmer in front of a PC. That's something that kind of changed a little bit, but it's still like I simply love tinkering with stuff and helping people build interesting architectures.
So how did you go from being into computers and working in computers even if you didn't want to learning about Bitcoin? Did you hear about it early on or later on?
Yeah, I heard about it. The first time was probably in end of 2012, roughly. So I actually built a small GPU miner back then, but it was mostly like, okay, that's some weird thing where you can generate tokens on your PC and it's interesting and look at it. And I had a PC with like, I think it was like two PCs actually with one GPU, a very expensive one because I enjoyed gaming back then. So I mined a couple of Bitcoin, but I didn't spend too much attention about it, to be honest. And back then I also started working for the city of Munich as a developer and worked on the Linux distribution. They migrated to back then from Windows and led a small team of developers. And back then I started to develop a relationship with the open source movement. So from Debian Linux, from the Free Software Foundation, all those people. And I remember it exactly, it was like in the mid of 2013, I attended a talk from the open source meeting in Munich, and there was one guy that basically thought about money and did a talk about the evolution of money, but with an like technical perspective of how would an open source money look, and they kind of mentioned Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And this was like the first time I really realized, okay, this is interesting. Because until this point I completely didn't care about economics or how money works.
Sure,
I spent money,
sure.
I spent more money than I actually had, like most of people do.
So you knew about credit. So you're in the credit system with the rest of us.
Especially in the young years. But back then, that was really, at that meeting, there was a switch that has been flipped. And ever since, I spent like 2013, 2014, like furiously buying, researching a lot of stuff. Back then, only Bitcoin. I didn't care about anything besides Bitcoin back then, even when like Litecoin and Namecoin and the others showed up.
Sure.
I did a lot of research. I did a short break, I think, in 2015 because it was simply, it was not that interesting. I locked away my stuff in most of my stuff. I sold a little bit, but most of my coins were locked in cold storage. I simply put it aside. I knew I was completely sure the idea would take off again at some point.
I had a similar thing where around that time I told everyone in the audience, because I was already doing videos. And I was like, okay, you know, things are going down, doesn't look good. I was like, it's time for everyone to get jobs.
Yeah,
and,
that's a good point.
If you have a job, keep your job. If you don't have a job, I'm going to go get a job. So a couple months later, I was working for a Bitcoin startup in San Francisco doing marketing and web pages and whatever they wanted, you know. And I did a couple more startups here or there, you know, waiting for the period to pass. It was time to get jobs.
Yeah,
then, so,
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I had a job back then, but it was really like, it was like there was so much negativity around, and I, just like the last year, I preferred to look into the technical stuff, the actual development.
Sure.
A lot changed since then, and I mean, last year 2015, I didn't look at Bitcoin almost at all, so I kind of ignored it. But last year,
that sounds like a great experience. I want to try that out. Everyone's like, just don't look at the price for a while. I'm like, well, I'm doing this damn daily show, and every day I look at the damn price, and if I don't do the price, they're gonna get mad. They're gonna be like, I just do the price today, but. Yeah, no, that sounds like a great break and vacation. So yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's like back then I was able to completely detach myself from Bitcoin and the price. In 2018, it was more like, okay, I know the price, but I'm just not checking daily or maybe not even weekly. But because I want to focus on the actual interesting developments like Lightning, but also like basic technologies that are or protocols that are possible already by now, like CoinJoins for privacy, like Wasabi does, the cool work that the Samurai guys, basically that's my t-shirt by the way, that they do. So
you can check out an exclusive interview with the Samurai Wallet developers, fully masked, right here on the World Crypto Network. We shot that at HCPP. It's the only time I think they've ever talked on video. So if you guys want to go back in the archive and check that out, it'd be pretty cool.
That's a good tip. I didn't see that one. I will definitely check it out.
Really interesting stuff, and it was great to talk to them. And they took a risk by putting the masks on and all that. They have anonymity they want to maintain, and you know, obviously we're filming this. It goes on the internet, but yeah, it was great to talk to them. It's an interesting project. So you got into Samurai Wallet and CoinJoins and all the new technologies. Did that bring you back to Bitcoin?
Yes, actually, back then, I mean, Samurai is pretty recent, also with like the very new developments, but basically what I was interested in was like the different experimentations that are taking place still in a lot of shitcoins. Personally, I think they're an excellent testing ground. Obviously, there are a lot of scams. There's no doubt that like 99% are probably not going to be around. But from a technical point of view, for me, they're still interesting, even if some of them, for example, like Veriblock, are currently spamming the network with their fees. But like from a technical point of view, I'm always thinking like, okay, this is interesting because if the network can't handle it and you can spend like 8 to 9 BTC to spam the complete network or a lot of the network to make it hard for people to use what the network actually worth and what can we do to improve it. And that's the kind of niche I found for myself. Also like governance and the fee market, security, privacy, those that are my kind of shoes.
Nice. So you're working as a security researcher now for Bitcoin. What kind of work are you doing?
I'm mostly doing like fundamental research. I'm working, for example, for a couple of companies that are securing their funds. I still have a day job with like 28 hours from a local Munich company.
See, like I tell people, keep your
yes,
job.
keep your job.
Keep your damn job.
Yeah. It actually adds a lot of flexibility. So, by the way, shout out to my company, Myron Wolf.
Absolutely, respect, man. Give them the flexibility. It's amazing.
The CEO is a huge, Holger is a huge Bitcoin fan, a maximalist actually.
All right.
And I simply try to give something back while I work for Bitcoin and obviously also for myself, but learn something. And that's what I try to do daily. So we host local meetups. I try to help out in local meetups. And obviously, if there's a paid gig, I can consult, for example, work on cold storage setup. I will do that. I'm not programming so much nowadays, but if there's a decent opportunity, I would do that also. But I'm mostly an architect and help people secure their funds. Think about architectures, integrating maybe Bitcoin and existing solutions. Unfortunately, most of it is not Bitcoin, but Ethereum and other technologies. But it is how it is. I definitely enjoy my different, the various different jobs I do daily. It's never boring.
That's great. Yeah. It's good to have that variety. I was always worried if I became a teacher, I'd be teaching the same thing every year. And Absolutely. 2 or 3 times is fine, but like 20 times or 100 times, it's like you can only do Rome so many different ways to kids who don't care about it. It's good to have that variety in your work.
Absolutely.
And thank you so much for the interview. Where can people learn more about what you're doing right now? Do you have a Twitter or
Yes,
a website?
I have a Twitter account. I'm the Blue Robot Mars Mensch on Twitter. Hit me up if you have any questions. My DMs are open ever since, so happy to chat if you have anything interesting to share.
All right. Thank you so much for the
interview. Thank you.